Right, so we decided to make a new rendition of Hamlet, and for this, we decided to go with a rather bold change to the time period. Could you tell us a little about what we decided to do?
Okay, so we made it in the World War II period, which was approximately between 1940 and 1945.
All right, and with this change, we probably can't have it in Denmark anymore, so what did you decide to do for that?
Okay, so the setting, we had it take place in the United States in a town.
All right, and now in this town, how did you incorporate the characters?
Okay, so Claudius is no longer a king, he's a mayor, and he took King Hamlet's, or Mayor Hamlet's spot.
All right, and now let's go straight into one of the scenes we decided to do. So let's go for Act 1, Scene 3. Here in the play, we have Laertes being sent off to France originally. Now, how did we change this so it would make sense in our time period?
Okay, so Laertes is in the town that the original scene takes place, and he's going just to a different town inside the U.S.
All right, and would you like to mention anything about characters, how they were dressed, anything along those lines?
Okay, so Ophelia has a short dress on because of the fabric shortages. Because they were still in a higher class, they could afford clothes with vibrant colors, but they just couldn't afford enough fabric to make long, elegant dresses.
So now we can move on to Act 1, Scene 5, and in this scene, Hamlet has just finished talking to his dead father, and now we have all the characters gathered around his father's grave. So, can you tell us a little about the setting changes made in this scene?
Okay, so in the original play, they were all gathered around a sword, but in our version, Hamlet goes to his grave, which is a cross with a helmet on top.
Alright, and what was the reason for those changes?
Okay, so the cross represents the overwhelming presence of Christianity in the U.S., and the helmet represents the World War I status that Hamlet's father had.
Okay, and now can you tell us a little about the character in this scene? So Horatio
is wearing a sweater vest and jeans in our scene, because that's more like what a scholar would wear in the 1940s.
Okay, and what about Marcellus, the guard?
Okay, so Marcellus wouldn't be wearing armor like he did in the original play, but instead he's looking more like a police officer. Okay, so now moving on to Act 2, Scene 1. In that scene, Polonius is seen giving money to Rinaldo. What's the purpose of that money?
Well, during this time, the world was just coming out of the Great Depression, and people had a very strong desire for large amounts of monetary wealth, and it was very easy to sway someone's opinions with it. So Polonius is seen giving money to Rinaldo in an attempt to get him to spy on Laertes.
And what was the purpose of the American-themed decorations in the background?
Well, the American-themed decoration helped symbolize how strong everyone's patriotic sense and nationalistic zeal was around the time of the war, because people wanted their country to win.
Mm-hmm. And now moving on to their clothing. Why was Rinaldo's clothing so casual?
Well, Rinaldo is portrayed as a very laid-back person. He's not too intense, and his posture also helps represent this. While, on the other hand, Polonius is seen keeping his very formal attitude while making such a low deal.
Okay, so now on to Act 2, Scene 2. In this scene, Hamlet's looking at Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and pointing out that they are spies. So why in the background is the building so broken down even though Hamlet is rich compared to the other people?
Well, with the world coming out of the Great Depression, maintenance was not the highest priority, and with the ongoing war, that made maintenance on houses even lower of a priority. So the building is so broken down because there's just not enough money to get a good maintenance team out for even the wealthy.
Mm-hmm. So why did Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have such similar clothing?
Well, they have such similar clothing because they're a lower class than Hamlet is, and a lot of the clothing had to be very similar. There wasn't enough time for individuality. There wasn't enough money for everyone to have their own unique clothes, and it really made life, some could say, bland.
Mm-hmm. And that was because of a focus on the war compared to at home, right?
Yeah, the whole world was focused on this war. So in Act 3, Scene 3, we have Hamlet not stabbing Claudius after what appears to be him reading the content of a letter Claudius is writing. Why is he writing a letter instead of praying in this?
So in the original play, we have Claudius praying, but we decided it would be better for Claudius to write a letter first, so Hamlet could see the contents of the letter and see that he may be repenting, so that's why he didn't kill him. But also, during this time, it was common for people to write letters of reflection or to loved ones, knowing that they might not see them again.
Beforehand, we mentioned how there's a shortage of good cloth to make nice formal clothing out of, but here it's shown Claudius is wearing formal clothing. Why is this?
Well, Claudius is the mayor of this town, and so he's obviously in the upper class. So he can still afford this clothing. Now, with this, though, instead of a normal 3-piece suit, he's going to be wearing a 2-piece, of course, because of the fabric shortage.
Alright. And one last question. Why pick this scene out of all the available ones?
This scene, originally in the play, this is such an important scene that we felt like if we left it out, it would completely change the meaning of the story.
So in Act 3, Scene 4, we're shown Hamlet stabbing Polonius behind the curtain in front of Gertrude. Now, I have a question about the scene, and why are there fish on the wall when, just coming out of the Great Depression, everyone was fishing for food?
Well, in here, we decided to add fish since we're in the mayor's house, the wealthy. And they fish more for sport than food, although the poor did have to fish for food during this time.
Ah, that makes sense. What of Gertrude's dress? It's very similar, if not the same, as Ophelia's.
So during this time, with the lack of fabric and material, much of the clothing was extremely similar to each other's.
And, it seems like Hamlet's not carrying a knife that's meant to be a weapon. It's more of a utility.
Yeah. So originally in the play, we have Hamlet's sword doing the stabbing, but we decided in a more modernized era, he would have ended up grabbing a kitchen knife, for example, to end up stabbing Polonius. Alright, so now we're at Act 4, Scene 1, and in here, Gertrude is reporting Polonius' death to Rosencrantz. So one of the big changes I notice is that Gertrude is delivering the news, and why isn't Claudius there?
Well, we assumed that Gertrude did not feel she needed to tell Claudius about the news before telling other people, because at this time, most men were off to war, so women had a bigger role in society.
And now we can move on to Act 4, Scene 7. Now, in this scene, originally, we have Laertes questioning why Claudius kept Polonius' death a secret, and eventually it gets to a point where Claudius convinces Laertes to kill Hamlet. So now, some big differences I notice in this scene is there's a fishing rod. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Mm-hmm. And so we decided to use a fishing rod instead of just Claudius's words because, first of all, it's a picture, so we needed to explain what Claudius's intentions were without having him say words. Also, we used a fishing rod because at the time fishing was popular, as shown in our previous scene.
Alright, and now I also noticed that there is very visibly money in Claudius's pocket. What was the purpose behind that?
So we used money to show that Claudius was really influenced by the power of the money and what he got from being mayor and why he told Laertes to do what he did. It was to stay in power. In Act 5, Scene 1, Laertes and Hamlet are seen at Ophelia's grave fighting each other. So why was the funeral that Ophelia had so small?
Well, the funeral was so small because people didn't have time for such a small and almost meaningless funeral of a suicide. There are many more important funerals where people have died in war, many larger families falling apart due to this, and people had jobs to do. They had factory jobs, people had to work in farms to feed people at war. There just wasn't enough time.
So why did Hamlet and Laertes look so mad at each other even though they needed to focus on their needs?
Tensions were so high at the time. Everyone was so concerned about were they going to be drafted next? Was their city going to be bombed? It was easy to set someone off when they're so uptight like that. And it's easily shown as Hamlet's ready to tackle Laertes and Laertes is ready to punch Hamlet in the face.
So in Act 5, Scene 2, Laertes and Hamlet are fishing, but Laertes goes to stab Hamlet. So why are they fishing instead of fencing?
Well, fencing was not a very popular sport at the time, so we used fishing instead, because fishing is a very popular activity, and it's an easy way for Laertes to catch Hamlet unaware.
Exactly. Well, why was the weapon Laertes used so small?
It doesn't really matter how large the weapon is, because a poison will still be lethal no matter the size of the incision, and the fact that, as stated before, many large combat-centered weapons were not kept in households.
What we found from this project is money and power can influence people, making them manipulative.
This is seen in the original play and highlighted in our version with the use of money in multiple scenes. Claudius has money, along with the suit, to represent his wealth. When he's attempting to convince Laertes to kill Hamlet so he can maintain mayor status, money is clearly visible in his suit. This is to show that the driving force behind Claudius's decisions were his desire for wealth and power. Although money is essential to almost everyone in the modern world, it is important to remember the dangers it can cause.